Welcome back to Your Story Medicine. I am your host, Juma Kay, and today I am with Harmony Lee, who is the founder of Non-Binary Dance Movement, also known as your gay dance teacher, aka, in my own words, your favorite gay dance teacher, and you'll know why in a minute. Harmony gives trans, queer, and non-binary Black, Indigenous people of color the space to fully take up that space because they believe that when you move your body, you heal your soul. And of course, not all of us come into our medicine because we're already healed. There's been experiences in our life that have led up to these moments. So this is the space for us to dig deep into what exactly that medicine is, and for you to hear the journey of these different healers so that hopefully you can see yourself in us and in the process discover your own medicine. So without further ado, welcome Harmony.
Hi.
Hi. So tell us, where is it you're calling from? And then in your own words, what is your medicine?
Well, thank you for the warm introduction. I am calling from my quarantine central in Long Beach. And my medicine is healing movement. So the way that I have both worked on my self-healing and how I like to work with other folks is to facilitate compassionate and intimate relationships with our own bodies so that we can feel connected, and from that connection, heal from trauma and emotional pain through movement. So that's what I do.
But I know it was not always this way. So what is it that led you to choose dance as your medicine?
Yes. So fun facts about me. Just a year ago, less than a year ago, I was in the military. And while I was in the military, my profession was to manage and lead outbreak investigations and public health initiatives. So I had a really high responsibility job. And little did I know that my nervous system was misfiring and rewiring and numbing me because I was pushing through so hard that the signals didn't trust my brain to do the responsible thing anymore. So in September of last year, I got out of the military, but I also had I'm just gonna call it 2 weeks from hell, where I was getting ready to leave the military. I had a really devastating breakup. And then I ended my 13-year relationship and named the family trauma that had been like underlying all of my stress for years. And this happened in a span of 2 weeks, and it knocked me on my ass because on top of that, I wasn't able to access the type of normal day-to-day social support that I was getting from my colleagues in the military. I was literally leaving. I remember one day I tried to get on base just to like finish some paperwork, and they're like, your card is done. You can't come back. And I was like, I really can't. So things kind of went from destable to more destabilized. I felt like my entire world, my routine just went upside down. I started dissociating. I started having panic attacks. Content warning for mental health stuff, but it got very serious. There was days when I just didn't have the energy to take care of myself. And the hard part was, my body was also just as confused as I was. So have you ever been in a conversation with somebody and they're like not getting what you're trying to say, so you're trying to like talk louder and they're just like not interpreting it? That's kind of what my body was doing with me. So my body was trying to send me these loud signals like, Harmony, you shit's fucked up right now. Like, we're trying to let you know this is stress. This is bad stress. And I was pushing through so much that even though it was yelling at me and causing both chronic pain, chronic fatigue, risking injury, it wasn't landing, and I wasn't doing anything with that information. And it really took a turn because, trust me, you want your body to talk to you. I was getting a tattoo piece on my back finished because this was sort of my, initially, I used tattoos for like healing and joy. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna finish this piece. I got out of the military. I'm having just the worst month. Maybe this will bring me something, you know, aside from the day-to-day like numbness and depression that I've been in. And I went to get my tattoo finished, and my artist had been working with me for a number of years. And my body was so inflamed and shut down that he was working on me. He was trying to put the ink into the design on my back, and my skin actually orange peeled. Like it raised itself so that you could see these little dimples because it was so tight, so inflamed. It actually started pushing the ink back out. And the terrifying part was I couldn't feel it. And my artist was like, this has been 3 hours. We need to stop or I'm going to scar you. Like this doesn't, your body's not absorbing this and I don't know why. And I was like, here's what's been going on with my life. He's like, we should take a break. You know, shout out to trauma-informed tattoo therapists, tattoo artists. And
I like what you did there though.
Tattoo therapy is a thing. But it gave me this pause to be like, wait, something's not right. My signals, what felt like normal to me is something's not wiring the way I want it to. And even when I was healing from that tattoo, like I actually couldn't feel the pain of my tattoo. I slept on my back and it was a full back piece. And I woke up and I was like, why am I on my back and why can't I feel it? So remember when I said like, your body sometimes yells at you? Sometimes it also gives you the silent treatment when you haven't been using those signals. And for me, the silence was way more terrifying than the noise. Because I knew then that like, I need to do something or I'm never gonna hear from my body again. And just in terms of day-to-day upkeep and safety, like I need to know when I'm in pain. And I had so much trouble naming pain that my body was just like, no, you're done. You don't get the signal anymore. So this is where movement came in because I had been dancing, but I was in such a deep depression and going through so much adjustment that I wasn't able to go to class anymore. So my practice just became on days where I had the energy to turn on Spotify and put on a song and just listen to it. That's what I would do. And sometimes I would like bob along. And sometimes I would stand up. And sometimes I would dance. And when I did dance, like that was a good day. That was a really good day because I knew that I was using my whole body in something other than just trying to keep it alive. I was making something with my body. I was enjoying movement. I was embodying a song that might have been in a mood that was different from mine. Like it gave me kind of like a resting place away from my mental state. And that's when I started getting curious about the way we hold trauma and pain in our bodies. I read the book, The Body Keeps the Score. I learned more about somatic psychotherapy and started kind of applying some of those myself. But I started with what felt good because nothing felt like anything. So any signal I could do to like have my body make noise, I would just jump at it. And over time, that small practice, or, you know, I promise you, I wasn't making the coolest dance moves ever. I wasn't. I was like lying on the floor, barely moving, or kind of spinning gently, and that was okay. But over time, those movements started to tell me things. Like I'd noticed that a shift in posture reminded me of a abusive situation, or the way I was holding my face reminded me that like I had a lot of tension stored in here from smiling all the time. I couldn't bring my face down. But these are the messages that I started to gather. Like, it was just data points. And I had to level with myself, as I think a lot of us do who are movers, and ask, like, what is my body's voice? And am I actually listening? Because I really want to listen. I don't want to lose them again. Because that would be devastating to me. So yeah, movement really saved my life, because there were days that just nothing else really would. And I didn't want to get stuck there, so I moved.
So this medicine unfolded after you left the military, said goodbye to a 15-year relationship, a 13-year relationship, and went to get a tattoo. The ink was not being accepted by your body. And so it was movement that essentially brought you back. And I can only imagine what it was like to go from a very rigid environment that operates in a more hypermasculine culture into, well, I see movement as being more in the feminine. And I think that we can also challenge putting genders to these activities. But I also think it speaks to how much imbalance exists and how I feel like you're doing so much work to restore what that can look like.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And I think, not everybody has a military background. I know I'm in a smaller cohort of that. But I think a lot of people are socialized to minimize the space they take up, and are socialized to carry their bodies in a certain way. So the work that I did for myself, I like to share, because it's hard to do this without a map. And I'm like, look, everyone's map's gonna look different, but here's what I got. Here are my notes. I have a field guide, I landed some waypoints along the way. I kept my compass dialed in, I'm sharing because it moved me out of a dark place, and maybe some of those waypoints will help someone else.
So tell us more about your ancestral lineage and how that has influenced your medicine and also the way it is you're showing up today.
Well, all right, ancestral lineage. Instagram's gonna get a quick behind the scenes, because I don't think I can turn around my laptop, but I'm sitting under my ancestral altar. There's in the middle is my grandma, and at the top is my great grandma and great great grandma, and my mom. And so my lineage is Chinese of origin. That is the side of my family that I'm connected with. And one thing that really struck me while I was dancing and claiming this identity as a dancer is the fact that that's 1, 2, 3 generations back, my great great grandmother had bound feet, and she couldn't walk. She was one of many girls in her socioeconomic bracket and family upbringing where they bound her feet. And she made a decision, which was kind of controversial, to not bind her daughter's feet. Actually, she kind of played it off. She was like, "Oh yeah, we'll bind them in the spring. Like, I'm just busy. It's a lot of work to like break your children's feet in half and fold them over with bandages. We're gonna just pause on that for a while." And she actually just kept delaying and delaying until she's like, "Oh, whoops, you're 10. Guess we're not gonna do that." But that was her way, I think, of quietly subverting that norm. But I think about that often because something that brings me a lot of joy is tap dance. I'm a beginner tap dancer and I love it so much. I started learning tap dance this year in like January. But it brings me so much joy to like make noise with my feet. And I thought about lineage of like, wow, I'm still like this DNA that was passed down. Like I have super high arches. I have a strong feeling it's because our feet were bent in half for a really long time. I also have a feeling that like the joy that it brings me to move my body and to connect with my feet is from this joy of like, your feet are free. Like I can move, I can bring myself places, and I can also bring this joy back several generations and say like, hey, I'm dancing. And like, that makes me happy because I'm doing it for them too. So.
Wow. Wow. I'm just thinking about, I'm feeling in my own body the ways that finding freedom in this vessel is truly doing the work to also move for my ancestors who may not have been able to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just had that imagery of your grandmother, your great grandmother dancing alongside you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is like where I dance. So I like to keep their folks. How does my lineage tie with my movement? I really do try to make movement offerings for my ancestors. It's an important part of how I connect to them. And I think they like those gifts. So.
Yeah. And it's also a part of what it means to decolonize our bodies, because even for many of us today, when we're sitting still, we're most of our lives, preschool, if you went to preschool, up until high school and even college, we are spending our time in these rigid positions.
Right.
So yeah, tell me more about how you feel your medicine is contributing to this dismantling and this recreation of what it looks like to be in these bodies.
Well, I think I'll start with how I feel personally. And yeah, being socialized into thinking that our bodies aren't meant to be dancers is something that is I didn't recognize that as a conditioning until fairly recently. I would say in the last year. And everybody's a dancer. Everybody with blood moving through their body is a dancer. There is a dance of everyday things that we do. Body language is dance. Dance is body language. They are the same. And just like everybody's got a different way of speaking, everyone's got a different body language. But it takes I think what a lot of dance programs or even classes kind of miss is that when people are first taking those initial steps to just move, that can be really, really challenging. It just getting to the studio, just turning on the music just to like move and wiggle, it can be so daunting. So the way that I see it is it is our birthright to dance. It is our birthright to speak with our body language, because our body language holds layers and layers of ancestral DNA messages, wisdom that are in tongues that we no longer speak, right? It's in messages of stories we don't know anymore. It was never passed down to us. It was lost to time. But something in us, we do have genetic, I'm going to just call it like gifts for survival. And some of those genetic gifts are epigenetic changes that are like de novo or environmental changes that come up through stress over somebody's lifetime, and they can be passed down. But just as you can pass down those changes that could be related to trauma, you can also pass down healing. So I see movement as kind of working both of those angles. You know, you're addressing past pain that maybe hasn't been resolved, you know, and ending generational curses, like literally through your DNA, but also bringing that healing forward, amplifying it towards your descendants, and not just like blood relatives. This includes your descendants can be community, right? They can be social. They can have all these different other arrangements. But when we heal, it amplifies. So.
It really stood out to me when you were talking about how our ancestry is like, it lives beyond just what's in our tongue. Because there's a lot of us who may feel like, well, because I don't speak the language of my grandparents or my ancestors, I'm not blank enough. I'm not Asian enough. I'm not brown enough, whatever the story is that plays out in our mind. And yet movement is a form of communication that many of us forget. And I think that part of what our colonized minds have done to us is this false belief that the only way to communicate with each other is through words.
Right, right. And I think I want to add just a little extra layer to that. And the fact that colonizers go after dance is also part of that cycle, right? Like, to remove someone's culture completely, to strip it, part of that is to say, stop dancing like that. It's shameful.
Oh, so
and this
true.
happens time and time again. And while people are doing the work of getting back into their bodies, they might also have to confront that inner dialogue of like, oh, I was told that when I move my hips like this, it's sexual, or like I'm asking for like attention or something like that. Or like, boys don't move like this. You know, all these other messages that are coming from outside of our bodies, our body mind, or how our body wants to move. It's a lot to unpack, but I think it's really worth it. And I promise, as somebody who's still working through it, it's really nice on the other side of that, because being able to move and talk with your body and giving it its fullest voice is, I think, such a great reward of just like being able to have that deeper intimacy with yourself.
And I also think it speaks to why it is you started non-binary dance movement, because of how we have labeled certain dances to belong to a particular gender.
Right. Yeah. Can I tell you the story of how I started NBD movement?
I'd love to hear it, yeah.
So I actually started NBD movement while I was in this shit show of a month back last year. And I took a burlesque class with one of my friends. And so things to note, this was a freestyle burlesque class. I love burlesque movement. I just think it's really fun. I was in a funk. I wasn't feeling good. Again, the depression was high. And it just felt good to just go hang out with my friend, do something fun for both of us. But we're both non-binary as well. And we struggled to be in class without dissociating. We had the pep talks beforehand. We're like, I got you. We got water. We got snacks. We're ready. Pronouns ready. I'm going to check somebody. Who's calling you she? They. Like, we had a whole session before. But I'm like, it doesn't have to be that hard. And it was actually their idea that they're like, hey, you like to teach movement. What if you taught a class for non-binary people? Which is how I started NBD movement, because I'm like, I found that a lot of folks found resonance with that, and it doesn't have to be hard. NBD stands for no big deal as well. I'm trying to share that, yeah, you can incorporate a non-binary approach, a gender expansive approach in your dance practice, and it's not a big deal, right? Let people pick what roles they have, lead or follow, right? If you're in a ballet class, let people choose to do point if they want to do point work. If they're in a cultural dance, let them wear the garb that resonates with them. Because often that also creates this shame. It pulls people out of dance, honestly. So many people quit. They have childhood just bad memories and trauma from dance classes, from shame. So just to have a free space to express yourself in your movement is I don't know. It's fun for me to hold that space, and it's something that I have seen a lot of healing take place. So.
Wow. Yeah, I think that we tend to equate non-binary to just gender, but we carry binaries and everything, even in different cultures. And so I love that reframe. And that's new information for me, that NBD also stands for no big deal, because if we were to expand beyond these binaries, then none of these issues that we're fighting for would need to be a big deal.
Mm-hmm. And it's not to minimize or bypass the task, right? I think there's still quite a big investment, a lot of energy involved in shifting that culture. But I think the more we normalize it and provide visibility, I think the easier it gets for folks to pave that way and not feel so alone.
Yeah. So I feel like the way that many people may be moving through this time is through dissociation. And I want to know, what is it that you're currently doing to stay grounded, but also what is it you're learning to release?
Yeah, well, I think I'd love to start by just saying that whatever stress response is coming up for people is a normal stress response. So that might look like checking out. That might look like feeling over zealous in trying to do everything and stay busy. It might look kind of confused. It might look antisocial. There's so many ways that this can be. But I just want to let folks know that none of it is wrong, and this is your body trying to protect you. It's just your stress response going like, oh, shit's bad out there. Pick one of these because your thinking brain is going to just get overwhelmed. We're going to just try to take care of this at the somatic level. But with that said, I think it is good to bring some mindfulness and bring that stress response back under our control. So things that have been particularly helping me are yoga. I just go on YouTube and check out, I love Yoga with Adrienne. It's a YouTube channel. I've just been doing yoga with Adrienne every day. Yeah, it's so
Who
good.
doesn't? She's so sweet. She's so like the girl next door.
And there's a dog, and then I'm sometimes half the time I just like smoke weed and then look at the dog, and I'm like, this was a great yoga class. I love this. I feel great afterwards, so that's cool. Yoga's been great. Having prioritizing play has really been my strategy. And I think things that I've been releasing are the old ways that I approached specifically outbreak situations, because I know that I over respond in like a public health crisis because this was my profession. So I feel, especially at the beginning of the outbreak, it was hard to check myself, to rein it back in and be like, you're not LT anymore. You got out. You can just chill. You can just survive and dance, and you don't have to run this. But releasing that takes a fair amount of work, because just sitting still, just playing and letting your mind be free, you have to stop thinking about COVID for a second. and that, I think, is the challenge for all of us, right? It can be really challenging.
I feel like there's a lot of us who have forgotten what it's like to play. And yeah, I attended your live weekly session, which we'll talk more about. And everyone, we played virtual Foursquare, and it was so much fun. And we were interacting with different things in our household. And I was just like, oh my gosh, where has this inner child been? So okay, what is a ritual or practice that you can share with us so that maybe we can just begin simple?
Bubbles. Oh. So I got one for you. And I think, you know what, I think I should get ready to move. But also, we're apparently twins today.
Oh my God! So
all right.
This was not planned.
Not planned, but we clearly have a very specific style. So if you don't have bubbles, what we're gonna do is imagine, and if you're welcome and invited to join along. I'm gonna do these literally, and you can follow along with me. But we're just gonna breathe and try to blow like long, big bubbles. All right, so we're gonna breathe in deep and exhale. All right, let's try that again. Breathe in deep. Don't pop your own bubbles before it starts. And just one more, because it's fun and I'm on a roll. So what we're doing with that long out breath is lowering our heart rate. And just breathing's important, number one. But as you extend your exhale, it actually creates signals of safety for your body to know that it's not in danger. It can lower that stress response, drop your heart rate, bring you back under control. I would also invite you to notice your vision after doing that exercise. A lot of folks have remarked to me that they can actually see their periphery better because stress creates a tunnel vision. So if you want kind of a reaction cue or something to gauge whether or not you are more embodied or shifting your level of embodiment, we can check in with other senses. But for this one, you can take that pause, get some actual bubbles if you want, or imagine them, and it really settles the heart rate. My heart rate went down a little bit because I've been talking a lot, but it's really effective and simple.
It's so amazing how much we neglect the importance of play and what it actually does to regulate our nervous system because of adultism and how if we see an adult play, or maybe we hold ourselves back from play because we're going to be told that, oh, that's immature, or stop acting like a child.
Right.
Like, what the heck does it even mean to adult?
Oh my gosh. What does it mean to adult? The question. Question deepens. Well, I think there's part of it where being an adult means learning how to reparent your inner child. And just like you would like prioritize play to your child's development, many of us missed some of that connection and missed those messages of supportive play. So while we're playing, you can also, the most responsible adult thing that I can think of is saying, I'm doing reparenting work because I'm trying to self-heal. That's responsible as fuck. So you should just play like, again, your healing depends on it. And it doesn't have to be work. There's no should in it. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's whatever provides space of mind. And the wonderful thing about play is that kids do it naturally, right? But kids also move so intuitively that they're actually self-regulating. They're learning self-regulating techniques. When we're socialized, those pieces get stripped away as like, this isn't the way you act, right? One example that I love to give, because kids are so good at this, is, I'm gonna hold my mic so it doesn't flop around too much. This, you know how kids do this and they just kind of like flop?
Yeah, and then if for people who are just listening in, how would you describe this movement?
I am throwing my head and my torso kind of around, waving it like kind of like a wiggly palm tree or like some seaweed. And it doesn't make any kind of sense. I'm just flopping around. But when kids do this, they're actually stimulating their inner ear. We have the vestibular system that tracks the way we move in space. And that vestibular system activation actually impacts our thinking mind. It improves our focus, it reduces stress, and makes it easier for us to learn. But in school, if the kid is, like, again, flopping around or moving, they're actually trying to stimulate their brain, but they're getting messages from their teachers to sit still, because that's how you're supposed to learn in the classroom environment. Doesn't make any sense with our intuitive wisdom, but we can reach back for those things and think about challenging those narratives of like, who told me that this was wrong and why? Let me try it again and make my own assessment of if it's effective for me or not. And I think play is just a laboratory to do that.
Ooh, I feel like this is for a whole nother episode, but it makes me think about how we label people or children who can't sit still with ADHD.
Right. And recess is being cut back and cut back and cut back, right? Like there's fewer and fewer, there's more and more like pathologizing movement and less avenues to healthfully express it. But yeah, let's just table it for another episode. But I would encourage folks in the meantime to tap into that inner child and maybe go back and think about what were your favorite games at recess. And that's a great place to start.
Wow, and it just made me think about how labels like ADHD are perhaps just that inner child screaming to actually move, and what would it look like to give ourselves permission to be able to take out that space, while also acknowledging that there are some people to where it is a real challenge to where they need assistance. But how is it that we don't shame it, but see the gift that it actually is?
Yeah. I think there's a few ways that I just want to offer as like approaching movement as well. And one is to challenge ableism, because one thing that's at the core of, you know, movement and who is allowed to move and who isn't also comes down to a really ableist point of view of certain bodies are meant for being dancers and certain bodies are not. And similarly, like I think I'm of the mind that like for some folks having a diagnosis and allowing that to just be like, this is just an aspect of myself, that's great. It explains something and it like saves me the work of just thinking that I'm supposed to be normal and I'm not. That's really valid. And I just wanted to like put that in there, that however folks are identifying and defining their mental health is up to them, and it doesn't obstruct the right to move. So yeah, I don't want to. I'm probably going to tangent off onto this, so I'll keep it concise. But
go ahead. This is your space.
But the thing that I really want to impart is that movement, as we know it, has so many narratives that have been enforced on us that are worth challenging. So while we're starting to move, it's also important to interrogate, like, who told me that I can't be a dancer, right? Where have I heard that I'm not the right look for movement or this type of movement? Stepping back from that and then viewing all of the isms that might be attached to it, like sexism, ableism, the list goes on, capitalism, every single part of it, brings that agency back to ourselves to say, like, okay, how do I fight capitalism by dancing? Well, dance is non-productive movement. So that can be, you know, a starting point for folks as well. But yes, everybody is a dancer. I believe that so firmly, and everybody's dance is unique. And I think it's a shame. Like I think the world could use more dance, could use more movement, and especially for those folks who don't think that they're dancers. You are the most important dancers. You are my favorite dancers. My beginner dancers who don't think that they're dancers. You're my favorite, because those are the voices that are missing from the movement language, from the movement discussion.
Wow. And that's why you are our favorite dance teacher. Not just gay dance teacher. You're a favorite dance teacher who happens to be gay.
Thank you. Asterisk. Also gay.
So, Harmony, what's one action you would like for our listeners to take?
Well, I guess that's an invitation. But if you would like to play with me, every week on Wednesday on Instagram, I do a virtual recess. I do tend to cuss a lot, but this is my PG family-friendly space. Because I would like to encourage folks to have intergenerational playtime. And virtual recess is my space to hang out with some of my favorite people, to play together, and to invite others to also partake in that exercise. So if you'd like to catch that, that's a great way to start incorporating play into your week. And I also have a virtual healing circle every Friday. So if anybody wants to delve deeper into some of those exercises with a little bit more discussion, that's the place to do it as well. But one step is just, I mean, after this call, if you want to just play, turn on some music and think of your favorite, like, dance moves, make a music video in your own living room. Anything that invites play is a blessing.
I love how I hear a child's voice behind you.
It's playtime.
It's totally playtime.
It is.
So where is it that people can go to actually find this and also find you?
So the place where I'm most active is Instagram. So if you find me on Instagram at your gay dance teacher, you can keep track of my work there. I am on Twitter now. Look, these kids are having a party. I'm so happy for them.
We're missing out over here.
It's like a play magnet. There's just things happening around me. And then, yeah, I'm on Twitter as well at gay dance teacher. And I have a Patreon if anybody wants to have prompts for movement exercises. I have 7 days of embodied movement to get you started. So those are the best ways to find me.
Harmony, thank you so much for your story, medicine, all the work that you are doing. You've also helped me play with my inner child, and I just encourage everybody who's listening, if you don't know how to play because it's been so long, then look to Harmony as your guide, as your new favorite teacher that you had no idea existed, and they are constantly holding these circles that are open, they're donation based, and also they are going to be eventually leading their own program if you do want to work deeper with Harmony to reparent your inner child and to also reclaim dance as the as a means of liberation and decolonization.
Well, thank you for that. I'm looking forward to playing with more folks.